Hi guys, and welcome to our lesson on climatic regions. So today we're going to be starting over on page number 7 in your notes, regional geography notes. It's going to look like this here, jump over as far as there, and we will get started. Now this 2024 question, what it asked me was to examine how culture or climate can be used to define regions with reference to examples that you've studied. So let's jump straight into this question. Now this question we're going to do a little bit differently. The reason being, normally you'd find students would look at their cultural regions or focus on their cultural regions a little bit more than climatic because it's a more frequently asked question. It's actually the most frequently asked question in this section, concepts of a region. However, we do want to have a look at climate and our climatic regions. So to start off here, regional geography is questions number 4, 5, and 6 on my Leaving Cert exam. Again, each of these questions will have a part A, a part B, and a part C. This question here asked me to examine how culture. Now, I would normally focus on culture, however, this time we're going to focus on climate. You'll be able to watch videos on this exact essay, but based on culture or on that 2020 question where you didn't get an option between language and religion. You had to do one, or you got an option, but you had to do one or the other. That's done for you on the on-demand videos. So make sure you look there, make sure you have culture ready to go. But in this case, it says how climate can be used to define regions with reference to an example, or it actually said examples. But notice the S in this case here is in brackets. So you're allowed to do one example or you're allowed to do multiple. Now, what I'd always say to students is, that's just telling you more than likely there isn't that 7-8 split in significant relevant points. However, I would always give a second example. So an example or examples that you have studied. Now this question here is worth 30 marks, and 30 marks to me is 15 minutes of my time and 15 significant relevant points in my Leaving Cert exam at 2 marks each. So let's start off with the word climate. Now here in the concepts of region chapter, you'll be looking at climatic regions or geomorphological regions or cultural regions, and there's always aspects related to them. When we speak about culture, we also talk about language and religion. When we speak about geomorphology, we talk about rock structure, relief, rock type. But when we speak about climate, well, when someone talks about the climate, they talk about usually 2 things. You speak about aspects like temperature, and also precipitation. Precipitation is an umbrella term for rain, hail, sleet, and snow, any moisture coming from the atmosphere. Now, in this case here, in this 2024 question, when the examiner asked us this, they gave us a tick and 2 marks for naming one of these. Now, naturally, when you speak about climate, you're going to talk about temperatures and rainfall or precipitation. Any of them words will do there. But that got me a tick and 2. Can be used to define regions with reference to examples that you have studied. Now, in this case here, what are my examples? What's my examples of my climatic regions? Now, an example or examples. My first is the one I'm going to focus on massively here. We're going to really learn one here, and we're going to be just doing a mind map for a second. My first and my main one is my cold temperate oceanic. A cold temperate oceanic like that is experienced here in Ireland, or you'll find it in kind of along, I'm going to say, the western coast of Europe. In this case here, you'll often find me say CTO, just to abbreviate. So if I do say cold temperate oceanic, you might see CTO. For naming my first example of a climatic region there, I get a tick and 2. And if I can draw a label sketch map, quite a difficult one to do in this case here, but you could obviously draw the prevailing winds pattern in here, showing Ireland and Western Europe. You're going to get a tick and 2 marks. That 2 marks might be a little bit harder to get. Now, it does say an example or examples, and you might choose just to write about your cold temperate oceanic climate. But even that being said, I would still name my second climate. And I'm going to name a second climate that we're going to be looking at when we look at the Mezzogiorno. What's the climate in the Mezzogiorno, your European region? It's a Mediterranean. A Mediterranean climate. For stating Mediterranean, I'll also get that tick and 2 marks. Now, straight away there, we have 2, 4, 6, 8. We have 8 marks out of 30, and again, that's my dissection done. Here, we're going to be focusing on my cold temperate oceanic climate. And because we haven't got to the Mezzogiorno yet, but I don't want to overburden you with too much information, I'm going to give you a quick mind map for the Mediterranean. So full detailed section of an essay here for cold temperate oceanic, with a little buffer for Mediterranean, knowing we're going to get that tick and 2 marks, and we're going to learn a lot about its climate later on. So guys, let's get started here. with my cool temperate oceanic climate. So guys, I'm going to get you to jump over as far as page number 12. You're going to, apologies, page number 8. You're going to see page number 8 here beside you. So to start off here, when we speak about climate. So what is a climatic region? So a climatic region is an area that experiences a particular climate. Now, these regions broadly share two things: the same temperature and the same precipitation patterns. Now, you can already go and give that word temperature a tick and 2 marks if you want, or precipitation. If you don't understand the word precipitation, I'd suggest you just make a little note beside that: rain, hail, sleet, and snow. It's a nicer word to use for your examiner than saying rainfall. And again, rainfall is slightly different. So precipitation, rain, hail, sleet, and snow. Now the next little paragraph here, second paragraph down, you can actually just bracket off. Not really important, you can look at in your own time. Instead, I want you to jump down to cool temperate oceanic. Where you see the words cool temperate oceanic, please give it a tick and 2 marks. That is my climatic region named. Now make a little note beside this as well: Ireland, GDA, Western region, but also the Paris Basin. Your 2 Irish regions and the Paris Basin all experience this climate type. So later on, when we're looking at our Irish regions and our European regions, although the average temperatures and precipitations might be slightly different, you're going to find that they fit into these categories here are very, very close. Same prevailing winds, same reasons for, winter and summer temperatures. So keep this in mind. Now we're going to start as per usual. You'll see my very messy writing along the left-hand side by breaking this essay up into bite-sized chunks. And we're going to be breaking this essay here up into 6 chunks here, and you're also going to find it across the page. So the left-hand side of the first paragraph, below the word cool temperate oceanic, I want you to write down number 1. Number 1 here you'll see is location. I'm going to start by discussing where a cool temperate oceanic climate is experienced. So the cool temperate oceanic climate is, highlight the word found, and highlight 40 to 65. It's found between 40 and 65 degrees north or south of the equator. Along the, highlight the word western, the western coast of continents. Ireland and Northwest Europe experiences this climate type, and it's also referred to as or commonly known as highlight the word maritime climate. Oftentimes you'll hear the word maritime climate. So what have we there? Location, 40 to 65. Number 2, we said western coast of continents. And number 3, we said it's also referred to as a maritime climate. 3 important things about its location. Next, we're going to focus on number 2. Number 2, you'll actually see here behind me, my temperatures or latitude. Actually, if you want to write in temperature/latitude along the left-hand side, please do, because latitude majorly impacts the temperatures. Highlight the word latitude. Now, above the word latitude, I want you to write down distance north or south of the equator. What do we know ourselves about latitude? Well, the further you move away from the equator, typically speaking, the colder it gets. And the closer you move towards the equator, the warmer it gets. So again, we're located about 51.1 degrees north of the equator here in Ireland. So we have that moderate climate. Let's get started on this. So latitude is a key characteristic of this climate. The fact that we're located at highlight the words mid-latitudes means that we do not, or that we have what we refer to as a moderate climate. There's, highlight the words, no extremes. There's no extremes in, highlight the word temperature. The temperature annual range, or the annual temperature range, highlight that word range. Now, what does the word range mean? Pop down max minus min, or highest minus lowest. When I'm speaking about the age range of something, you'd look for the oldest person, the youngest person, you'd say the oldest minus the youngest person's age. When you're looking at the temperature range, you get the highest temperature and you subtract the lowest temperature. So the average annual temperature range is around 11 degrees Celsius. Highlight 11 degrees Celsius. So we're saying latitude, we're saying mid-latitude, which gives no temperature extremes, and the annual temperature range is around 11 degrees Celsius. Now that's not a huge temperature range. If you look at somewhere like a desert, even daytime and nighttime temperatures there can vary above 30 degrees Celsius. Here we're saying, generally speaking, it stays within the 11 degrees Celsius marker. Okay, so not massive changes. Let's start off with summer. What do we know about our summer temperatures? Now, we know ourselves, we live in Ireland, we experience this climate. Summers tend to be a lot warmer than winters. So let's make sure we tell our examiner that. So summers are, highlight the word, warm, okay? Take that with a pinch of salt. Summers are warm. And what you'll find is that they average between, highlight for me, 15 and 17. They average between 15 and 17 degrees Celsius. Now, we're going to give 3 reasons for this. The fact, apologies. In this case here, we're going to say, apologies, just went off script there for a second. Go back on. Slightly higher averages occur inland. So slightly higher averages occur inland. Now, summer temperatures are influenced by, number one, I forgot my sentence there. Number one, they're influenced by the high angle of the sun in the sky. Sorry, apologies, I meant to say the word low. I'm getting confused here. The low angle of sun in the sky. Number two, highlight the words, frequent cloud cover. Now, clouds act as insulation. They keep in the heat. And number 3, the cooling influence of the sea. Highlight the word winter. Winter temperatures are mild. Highlight winter and highlight mild. And highlight 5 degrees Celsius, averaging around 5 degrees Celsius. Winter temperatures are kept relatively high by the warming effect of the, write down number 1 beside it, North Atlantic Drift. Now, the North Atlantic Drift, place a little arrow out to the side and write down the words warm ocean current. The North Atlantic Drift is a warm ocean current. This brings extra cloud cover in winter, which acts as an insulation blanket. An insulation blanket keeping Ireland warm. Ireland, highlight Ireland. Ireland can be found between 51.1 and 55.5 degrees north of the equator. Highlight 51.1, 55.5 and highlight Ireland. Ireland experiences mild winters averaging around 6 degrees Celsius in January and moderate summers averaging around 15 degrees Celsius in July. Now that there is my temperature, so what are we thinking there for that? We're looking at temperature, we're saying moderate temperatures, no temperature extremes. We're thinking summer temperatures around 15 to 17, there's 3 reasons for that. We're thinking winter temperatures around 5 to 6, you can say either of them. 1 reason for that, our North Atlantic Drift, and Ireland, where we're located, 51.1 to 55.5, and again, our summers and winters are the same. Our summers tend to be moderate and our winters tend to be mild. We don't get that climatic extreme. Now moving down to number 3, we're going to discuss precipitation. Pop 3 to the left hand side, highlight the word precipitation. Now where you write the word precipitation, you may already have this done, but write down the words rain, hail, sleet and snow. Precipitation is any sort of moisture from the sky. Now think about rainfall in Ireland. It's the most common type of precipitation we have here. Does it occur throughout the year or is it isolated to one time? No, unfortunately it occurs throughout the year. Where gets more precipitation? High upland areas tend to get more, lowland areas tend to get that a little bit less. So what are we saying here? Precipitation occurs, highlight the word throughout. It occurs throughout the year. With the heaviest, highlight the word heaviest rainfall, the heaviest rainfall occurring in winter. Rainfall varies with, highlight the word relief. Now, but for relief, if you don't understand the word relief, when I speak about relief, I'm talking about is somewhere an upland area or is somewhere a lowland area? Upland or lowland, which is it? In this case here, varies with relief. We're saying with upland areas receiving more than lowland. This type of rainfall is referred to as relief rainfall. Highlight relief rainfall, I'm going to explain that to you in a second. Rainfall amounts may be lower than average due to the, highlight the word, rain shadow effect. Rain shadow effect, rainfall also decreases from west to east. Now, what is a rain shadow effect? Well, if you've ever been outside and you've been standing outside your house and the rain was pelting down, and you literally said, okay, I'm going to go to the opposite side and stand the opposite side of this house. And you're sheltered by that wall. That's what a rain shadow effect actually is. It's basically that shelter like a wall, but from usually mountains. There's more rainfall in Ireland along the west coast than the east. And that's the same for everywhere that experiences this climate type. It's due to the prevailing winds. Now in Ireland, highlight Ireland. Rainfall frequently occurs throughout the year. It kind of averages around 1,500 millimeters per year, with the highest or the maximum in winter. So there's a winter maximum here. So we're saying here the western regions receives up to, highlight western and highlight 2,500. Up to 2,500 millimeters per year, whereas the eastern region, where you'll find the Greater Dublin area, the GDA, receives on average around, highlight 800. Highlight east and highlight 800 millimeters per year. So a huge difference. Now, the reason for this difference between west and east is to do with what we're going to discuss for number 4, our winds. The, highlight the words, warm, moist, prevailing southwesterly winds. Now, prevailing winds are the most frequent winds. They're the most common winds. They are the winds that dictate quite a lot. They tend to, I suppose, in this case here, our prevailing wind, because it travels with that North Atlantic drift coming up from the equator, it brings warmth, it brings heat, but it also brings moisture. That moist, warm, southwest prevailing wind, highlight that there, exerts a major influence on our climate. They're responsible for our mild winters in the region and also our very high annual precipitation levels. So it dictates the fact it doesn't get really, really cold and also that our precipitation levels are quite high. Now we're going to jump across over as far as our next page. Our next page is page number 9. So let me get that done. So we're across the page on page number 9. So moving on to our next part here, number 5, which is going to be based on our ocean currents. The highlight words North Atlantic drift. Now we haven't spoken much about the North Atlantic drift, but it is a highlight words warm ocean current. Now, an ocean current is a movement of water within the sea. It's like a river. Our ocean currents and our wind patterns tend to go hand in hand. They move along together. It has a moderating influence on the like of Ireland along coastal regions. It keeps the like of Norway ice-free, it's coast ice-free during the winter months. And we know that the strongest winds come during the winter months rather than summer. Our last one here is number 6, depressions. Now, above the word depression, I want you to write down an L, because when you're looking at weather skills, you're going to be looking for an L when you see the word depression. It's an area of low atmospheric pressure. Write that down if you need to. Low atmospheric pressure. Depressions are formed are formed over the North Atlantic Ocean. So again, and they're driven into Western Europe by our southwesterly prevailing winds. They're bringing number 1, highlight changeable weather, and number 2, they are bringing frontal rainfall. It took me a second there. Now, frontal rainfall, like relief rainfall, I'm going to explain in a second, but it's where a warm air front or air mass, cold air mass meet, and where they meet, you get a front, where the warm air is forced to rise. Below that, you'll see a diagram. Again, you can create a sketch map of that, put in your prevailing winds, and on the bottom of that page there, I'm just going to get you to bracket that off. That's just going to maybe help you in case a question comes up on how economic activity is linked to climate. More so when you see your Irish regions, your European, and your continental, subcontinental. Now, that is my cool temperate oceanic climate gone through in my essay. But we know ourselves that's not technically where we need to start learning. Instead, I need you to jump across the page over to the mind map, and we're going to get breaking up this essay into bite-sized chunks. So guys, where you're going to jump as far as I said, across the page, but your page should look something like this. So just to show you, this is what you should be working with here. You're working with the first one, the top one, and we're going to be looking at the Mediterranean climate as well, but very, very, very briefly for that one here. So let's get started. So the first thing here I want you to do, pause the video, take down your 6 keywords. These 6 keywords, again, are going to give you that structure on your paper. So at the center here, to start off, we have our cool temperate oceanic. Where you see that, I'm going to give it a tick and 2 marks for myself. You're going to see we're going to look at the location, the temperature, which I actually referred to as latitude previously, precipitation, winds, ocean currents, and depressions. And again, this is what we're learning, the blue writing first. Learn that, pause, learn that. Then learn the black writing, and then back into the essay. We'll be saying it constantly as you're moving along. So to start off here, location-wise. Well, a climatic region to start off is a region that broadly experiences a particular climate. And they broadly share 2 things, temperature and precipitation. Our cold temperate oceanic climate is the climate we're going to study. It's the climate experienced by our Irish regions, the Greater Dublin area, Western region, and also in the Paris Basin. But that's a transitional climate, and we will come back to that. Now, first thing here in relation to location. Well, you're going to find a cold temperate oceanic climate is experienced between 40 and 65 degrees, north and south of the equator. So you're going to find it between 40 and 65 degrees north and south of the equator. And you're going to find it's along the western coast. It's found along the western coast of continents. Now, examples of places, and you can write this down, EX, get the red pen out if you want to write down an example, that experience this climate would be the like of Ireland and would be the like of Western Europe. It's also referred to, jump to the middle, as a maritime climate. A maritime climate, it can also be referred to as. Now, the second thing here we spoke about was our temperature. We spoke about three things for temperature. We spoke about the range. We spoke about summer. Keep these a little bit separated out more than I have. And we spoke about winter. We also spoke about Ireland. Now, just let me place this down a little bit further. So we spoke about Ireland as well, or Irish. Now here, this is the temperature, but it's also, I suppose in this case, the latitude that you're discussing as well. So we said that we were located, and this is the connection here, at a mid-latitude. So this is a mid-latitude. And as a result of that, there's no extremes in temperature. Your temperature range, and what is range? Again, write these little notes in for yourself. Your range is the max minus the min, highest minus the lowest. Your temperature range isn't extreme. It tends to be around 11 degrees Celsius, not 10, which I wrote down, 11 degrees Celsius. Summers, how would we describe the summer temperatures? Well, summers are warm. I'm not going to say the word hot. They definitely aren't hot, but they're warm. They tend to kind of average, in this case here, between about 15 and 17 degrees Celsius. Now, if you said 16, that's fine. If you said 15 or if you said 17, that would be fine. There's three reasons for that. These reasons are going to be the same when we get to our Irish regions. We're not writing these down. Number one, the moderating influence of the sea. So that North Atlantic drift traveling in, the fact we're beside water. Number two, the low angle of the sun in the sky. And number three, the frequent cloud cover. That cloud cover acting as insulation, keeping in that heat. Our winters tend to be what we refer to as mild winters. So we're going to say the word mild. Winters are mild. Now, winters are mild. Why are they mild? Well, first of all, what do they average? They average between around 5 and 6 degrees Celsius. Now, it's up to you if you want to say 5 or 6. A lot of people will say 5.5. I'm going to say 5 degrees Celsius here, okay? 5, 6 degrees Celsius. And the reason that they're mild is due to the warming influence of the North Atlantic drift, which we'll be speaking about down here. Ireland. Now, first of all, where is Ireland located? Ireland is located, location-wise, 51.1 degrees to 55.5 degrees north of the equator. That's almost my symbol for the equator. Now, we want to write down two temperatures here for Ireland. So, we have our summers, which average around, winters, which average around 6 degrees Celsius, and our summers, which average around 15 degrees Celsius. Again, you'll know the highest is the summer, the lowest is the winter. So what have we so far? A cold temperate oceanic climate. Well, we know what climatic regions are. They're regions that broadly share a particular climate. The main two things that they broadly share is temperature and precipitation patterns. Cold temperate oceanic climate, also referred to as the maritime climate, is experienced between 40 and 65 degrees north or south of the equator along the western edge or coast of continents. This is experienced by Ireland and Western Europe and is also referred to as a maritime climate, if I haven't said that already. Here you're going to find, because we're located at a mid-latitude, there's no temperature extremes. The temperature range tends to be around 11 degrees Celsius, range being my max minus my min. Summer temperatures are warm, averaging around between 15 and 17 degrees Celsius. There's three reasons for these warm summers. Number one, the low angle of the sun in the sky. Number two, the frequent cloud cover. And number three, the fact you have your North Atlantic drift, keeping us cool. Winters tend to be mild, averaging around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. The main influence on this is the North Atlantic drift, bringing in warm moist air and providing plenty of cloud cover acting as insulation. Ireland in particular is located between 51.1 and 55.5 degrees north of the equator. Summers are warm or mild, I'm going to say it there. Moderate, I think is the best word. Averaging around 15 degrees Celsius in July. Whereas winters, January temperature, are mild, averaging around 6 degrees Celsius. Again, just look at that. We're going fact. Look at the numbers you're giving your examiner. You could be trying to learn one sentence off by heart. I don't know how many words that is. That's a couple of words, a couple of numbers. And it sounds so good for your examiner. You're giving them so many facts, so many figures there, but you're going to be able to recycle very, very similar figures again. Now, precipitation. First of all, the first thing I'm going to say here, throughout year. You get precipitation throughout the year, but when is it most common? Well, most commonly precipitation occurs during the winter months. And what we know is that it varies. Upland areas and lowland. Upland areas receive more in the form of relief rainfall. Now, give me 10 seconds to explain relief rainfall. What is relief rainfall? Well, relief rainfall, going to wipe this out for 10 seconds just to get this explained. Maybe jot over to the back of your notes. You should have, in a couple of pages time, you should have a blank page. Let's make a little note of what relief rainfall actually is. Now, for relief rainfall, basically you'll have the sea here, and the sea meets the coastline. What happens when you have your body of water here? I'm just going to say sea, it can be ocean. The North Atlantic drift brings in these warm, moist air, and it meets an upland area, a mountainous area. When it meets that upland area, that warm, moist air is forced to rise up. As it begins to rise up, what happens? It cools and it condenses. It cools and condenses to form clouds. Now, once that cloud reaches 100%, not 10%, 100% saturation, rainfall occurs. So, that's what relief rainfall is. Notice I'm placing my rainfall at an angle. I'll come back to that. It also varies from east. I'm actually going to say west first. From west to east. Why? Why does it vary from west to east? Well, the west in Ireland gets 2,500, again, millimetres up to that, whereas the east only receives around 800 millimetres. Please note that I'm placed in millimetres, that is per year, and these are figures for Ireland. What is my reason for this variation in your rainfall? It's something we refer to as a rain shadow effect. Now, a rain shadow effect is experienced in upland mountainous areas. Basically, what happens is the far side of mountains, like here, the leeward side, I'm going to pop the word leeward side, experiences a rain shadow effect. Because what happens is the rainfall pours in the same way as the prevailing wind, the winds, so it comes in this direction here. Which means this area here is sheltered by the mountains, so it experiences a rain shadow effect. It experiences that rain shadow effect basically on the leeward side of the mountain, which means this is why the east of Ireland doesn't receive as much rainfall as the west. When we think about Ireland here, sorry, scribbly diagram is about to happen. Not the worst I've ever drawn, but look, not the best. When we think about Ireland, our prevailing winds are that warm, moist air comes in this direction. It meets the western mountains, and by the time it's got to the east coast of Ireland, it's actually lost that moisture because of this relief rainfall. Now, I would take a second with this. I'll step back. You pause the video, take down your relief rainfall on a blank page for yourself so that you understand it. So, should be enough time. Again, pause if you need to. This is something that we're going to come back to when we actually look at the western region and the Greater Dublin area. You're also going to say the Greater Dublin area experiences a rain shadow effect from your western mountains, which is why it receives less rainfall. Now that there is my precipitation. My precipitation was number 3. Again, rain, hail, sleet, snow. Number 4, we discussed the winds. Now, I've already discussed the winds there. Our winds are our southwesterly winds. Now, your southwesterly winds, I spoke about the direction they come in. They come in again along the west coast, the west to the southwest coast, and they're basically bringing that warm, moist air. Our southwesterly winds is linked up to number 5, which is our ocean currents. If you look at ocean currents, and I always think if a student doesn't understand, pop on YouTube for 10 seconds and just type in the words world's ocean currents. The ocean currents are traveling around like rivers in the ocean. They go and move in the same direction as your wind patterns. And basically they come from two places. Your poles, bringing cold, or the equator, bringing warm. We're very lucky here because we have the North Atlantic Drift, as our ocean current, as our warm ocean current. I'm going to write that word in red. It is a warm ocean current, OC for ocean current, which means it's traveling from the equator. So if we think about the world here, here's our equator at 0 degrees. Here's Ireland about 51.1. I'm not even going to draw in Ireland properly there. But basically what happens is this ocean current travels up from the Gulf Stream onto Ireland. It travels predominantly across water, so it picks up that moisture, which is why we get a lot of rainfall, but why our coastlines are ice-free during the winter months. It has a major, major impact in Ireland. It also influences the fact we get a lot of depressions. Now, depression is an area of low atmospheric pressure. If I ask you to go to the short questions and I say, okay, look for a depression on a weather skills map, you'll look for the letter L. The opposite is H, which is an anticyclone. Think of the word depression, it would be linked to the word low. Now, because this warm, moist air is traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, picking up that moisture, it brings two things. Well, it brings depressions into Ireland. So again, depressions are formed along the the Atlantic Ocean, and they're brought into Ireland. Now, when they're brought across to Ireland and basically all of Western Europe that experiences this cool temperate oceanic, not just Ireland, it brings changeable weather, kind of weather extremes. But it also can bring frontal rainfall. Now, frontal rainfall isn't as much impact in Ireland, so I'm not going to explain it in as much detail. But frontal rainfall is as simple as this. Basically, you have a warm air mass and a cold air mass, and they meet. Which one's lighter? Well, warm air is always lighter, so that's always going to rise. The two of those meet here. That point there is referred to as a front where they meet, and the warm air rises. As it does, just like always, it cools and descends, and the cold air again drops and moves under. Once this air cools and condenses, you get clouds, and once they reach 100% saturation, that's going to be your rainfall. Now, that there is a cold temperate oceanic climate. You're going to recycle this quite a lot, guys. But back to our question. Our question basically asked us about climate with reference to an example. There we spoke about our cold temperate oceanic, but we did say we wanted to have a look at our Mediterranean climate. Now, I've no essay done for this because you're going to look at this later on and I want you to learn how to recycle this information. So, on the same page as you have your mind map for your cold temperate oceanic, we're just going to learn a couple of facts that we could maybe write 3 or 4 SRPs, other than this, on our Mediterranean climate. So, you have a little bit of space here on page number 10, on the bottom of this page here, to write a second climate. I've chosen Mediterranean, and again, just for writing Mediterranean climate, I'm going to get that tick and 2 marks. Now, you're going to notice a little box there on page number 10. It says the word link mezzogiorno. You're going to be learning all about this a little bit later on page number, right in 168. Now, I'm aware students sometimes decide to focus more on the Paris Basin and they don't do very much about this, but you do need to know a little bit about the Mediterranean climate in case you're asked to compare and contrast agriculture under the heading of climate. That's why we want to get this here. Now, we're not going to learn a big essay because we know how to structure this now. We're going to talk first about the location. So Mediterranean climate tends to be experienced between, and again, these are approximately, where they're experienced, around 30 degrees to 45 degrees north and south of the equator. And they also are along the western coast or the western edge of continents. Now, you already know an example of an area that experiences this climate is the Mezzogiorno in southern Italy. There's an SRP for you already. A Mediterranean climate, tick and 2. A Mediterranean climate is experienced between 30 and 45 degrees north or south of the equator. Typically found along the western edge of continents, full stop. One area that experiences this is the Mezzogiorno in southern Italy. Tick and 2. Perfect SRP. Temperature. Again, we got a tick and 2 for the word temperature already. That racked up another 2 marks for us. So temperatures tend to be a little bit more in the extremes here. So what you have, let's think. We need to know the summer temperatures and we need to know the winter temperatures. Now, you're talking about a much larger temperature range here. It tends to be much, much higher. Summer temperatures tend to average around 29 degrees Celsius, whereas winters average around 14 degrees Celsius. So you're going to say summer temperatures are extremely warm, averaging around 20 degrees Celsius, 29, apologies, degrees Celsius, in comparison to your winter temperatures, which only average around 14 degrees Celsius. So 14 degrees Celsius is still very, very warm. It's nearly as warm as our average temperature during summer here in Ireland. We're usually between 15 and 17 with cool temperate oceanic climate. Again, that's not going to help very much for the likes of agriculture. Precipitation by rain, hail, sleet and snow. Now, precipitation, what you're going to find. Precipitation tends to be kind of varied, okay? You do tend to have mild, moist winters. That's the first thing. But oftentimes you have very dry summers. And these summers often experience drought. Again, is that going to be good for crop growth? Absolutely not. It's going to be really, really, really bad. Now, there tends to be a massive variation in precipitation. Again, due to the prevailing winds from east to west. Apologies, I'm going to write down west to east first. Western areas, just because of your prevailing winds coming in this direction, your southwesterly prevailing winds, actually, obviously the other direction, coming from this direction, the western edge of the like of the Mezzogiorno tends to get a lot more rainfall. It tends to average around maybe 1,000 millimeters per year. That's per year, don't have space for that. Whereas the east only really experiences around 600 millimeters per year, not 6,600. I'm loving adding the zeros on there here. Per year. So you get a lot more precipitation along the west than the east. Now, why would that be in the like of these areas? It can be due to the fact of a rain shadow effect in the like of the Mezzogiorno, with the Apennine Mountains sitting in the middle, okay, or Pennine Mountains, whichever you want to say. Now, that's only a snapshot on the Mediterranean climate, which is related to the Mezzogiorno. Here we looked at obviously the location. We can get an SRP there. We know we could probably put an SRP out of here with a little bit of information, a little bit more, and one out of here. We're not aiming for that 8 and 7 split, unfortunately, here. Okay, that's not our aim. Instead, we wanted to focus on cool temperate oceanic and give a little bit about our Mediterranean. Because the fact of it is, guys, more than likely, if you're doing your Leaving Cert exam, you're going to be focusing on culture and your 3 cultural regions, which you're going to see in one of our next lessons.